It seems as though recently we are constantly looking for films that are going to uplift us, that are going to essentially bring our spirits and just take them from whichever low point they are and just lift them up. And I feel like there's no better way of describing that feeling than the feeling that you get from seeing a film that is completely new to you based on a book that ultimately just surprises you at every moment that you are watching it. And there's no other film that is in theaters as of right now that does that so eloquently like Project Hail Mary. Now, going into this film, obviously I heard reviews, heard, little nuances online of what people were saying about this movie, and every review that I heard was that it was overwhelmingly positive. It's a film that is absolutely gorgeous and that it, has all these incredible moments and stuff. So I was like, okay, people are being either overly positive or this film actually is as good as it is that they say it is. I mean, so I had to go see it for myself. So that's what I did. I went and I saw this film in theaters, and I have to say, this film really surprised me in every single positive way that you can possibly imagine. Let's start off with obviously cinematography, which is absolutely mind-blowing. There are moments where this movie evokes the sense of, Interstellar. Sometimes you're going to feel like this movie leans a little bit towards 2001: A Space Odyssey or Apollo 13. It picks up little crumbs from those movies and ultimately brings them together in a single film. Now, obviously, this isn't just, a conglomeration of, other stories. It actually is based on a book by Andy Weir, which is the same guy who wrote The Martian. So if you are familiar with The Martian and, the level of detail and care that they take with, their characters, Andy Weir actually wrote, The Martian. And obviously, with all those details that you see in that story, be prepared to see those details here, because it's very much the same sort of nuance that you would expect from The Martian here as well. But I feel like seeing how this movie is shot, cinematography-wise, is just absolutely breathtaking. Every little nuance and detail that you see on screen, how it's shot, intentional moments that you see the camera, either following, an actor, or maybe it's even Rocky who's walking around and that sort of thing. So everything is structured in such a way that it's beautifully put together. So the editing alongside, obviously the cinematography of this movie is just absolutely beautiful. And speaking of the quality of the image, I was lucky enough to actually find a screening that was being screened in 70 millimeters, which, let's pause for a second. First off, I did not see it in a 70 millimeter IMAX because obviously nearby, they don't have 70 millimeter IMAXs near where I live. So obviously I ended up seeing it in 70 millimeters on a smaller screen. So I would say it's technically cropped, but obviously the quality is still there. And it's very interesting to see a movie being projected in a traditional manner, because nowadays I walk into a Dolby Cinema and I'm watching something fully digitally on a screen with all this, incredible audio and everything that we see. So yeah, it is kind of questionable sometimes when you're like, should I see it in film? Should I see it in digital? Trust me, the film quality is amazing. And like, just the fact that you're watching something in a traditional manner with, that, texture, that grain, you see those little hair and dust particles on, the celluloid, like you expect it to be, in a film canister. But honestly, it just looked amazing on film, especially considering that you're watching it in a cropped ratio. So I gotta give them props for that too. And I have to talk about the score of this movie. Beautifully scored, beautifully put together. I mean, the emotional moments hit you with the actual music. moments that are sort of silly, the music follows that style. I mean, you really have to bring together a group of very special people to put this together in the way they did. And with the music and the score that they, give you, there are moments where your heart is racing, when it's a moment like, like something bad's going to happen and you think it's going to happen, but luckily, something good happens. And then obviously the score follows that. I'm just absolutely, blown away at how well put together this movie is. And how can I forget to talk about the cast of this movie? Now, it's very weird to talk about casting in a movie where, effectively speaking, there is only 2 actual actors, albeit one actor, if we have to be very honest, just one actor, and that is Ryan Gosling, who absolutely killed it as Ryland Grace. And now that I think about it, Ryan Gosling, RG, Ryland Grace, RG, same initials. Funny, but still, absolutely amazing. Probably the best I have seen him in a role, to be honest. I mean, typically he has to play the heartthrob, or he has to, be the boyfriend, or has to be kind of like dull and kind of flat. Here, he expresses a range of emotions in this role. And obviously, I'm not even going to get into the whole Barbie situation, because him as Ken, he has to exert himself a whole lot more than he does in this movie. But I feel like in a dramatic way, in a more almost calculated manner, he is fantastic in this film. And honestly, I would not be surprised if we get an Oscar nomination for Ryan Gosling in 2027. So just be on the lookout for that, because I think he did great here. Now, apart from him, we also have Sandra Hüller. I think that's her name, Sandra Hüller. She is absolutely amazing as Ava Starr. Almost went to another franchise there. Ava Starr is a very strong character, a character that is almost like put in between a rock and a hard place. So you have to get an actress who is prepared to play that role, where either things are going to go absolutely great or horribly wrong. And she's put in that position, a couple times in the movie, as you see as it goes along. But Sandra does an absolutely fantastic job here portraying this character. Now, obviously, we have to make a shout out to the man who does, I believe he does the voice of Rocky, and that is James Ortiz. I know it's meant to sound like a computer that is talking, but in this case, it works. It's a translation mechanism that we are understanding between Rocky and Grace. So I'm really impressed. Even though it's robotic in nature, absolutely great and fits very well with this film. So I have to give a shout out to Milana Vaintrub, which most people know her as the AT&T girl, but luckily in this film she actually plays, albeit a small role, an actually great role, by the way, because I've never seen her do a Russian accent, and she does it really well. So I'm really impressed with her work here. I hope she does more work. I hope she works on other projects in the future that doesn't involve just commercials for a phone company. So yeah, that's what I expect from her. But just a quick shout out to her for doing a great job in this film. So you might be asking yourself, how did I feel after watching this movie? Because the whole goal of the movie is to lift your spirits. And I have to say, the spirits were absolutely lifted, because overall, the emotional toll that goes through this movie, and you have to go through ups and downs. I have to be very honest here. I cried a couple of times during this movie. I teared up a couple of times this movie, sort of like trying to imagine myself in that sort of situation where you're like, okay, the whole world is at stake. I'm doing a one-way mission, because that's what is given to Grace, is like, hey, this is a one-way mission. You're not coming back from this. So having that playing through your head this whole time, like, oh, okay, so I'm saying goodbye to these people that I'm never going to see for the rest of my life. And ultimately speaking, as the story progresses, you're going to have those ups and downs of emotion. I laughed several times because this movie is very comedic. Like, you're going to laugh several times throughout this movie. You're definitely going to cry several times throughout this movie. There are some tense moments where you're like, oh crap, like how the heck are they going to get out of this one? And there obviously are those moments where you're like, okay, I expect this from a movie that takes place in space. So you have a moment there where it feels very Interstellar-like in some of the tense moments. Comedy-wise, you expect this from like a sort of buddy cop kind of situation where you have, good cop, bad cop, but it's not really in that, vein. There's no good cop, bad cop here. It's just two scientists or two beings that are of science background that are here to solve the exact same issue, and they're in the exact same situation. Grace's entire crew died, and it's only him who's left, and Rocky is in the exactly same situation. So we're talking about two people here who have to work together in order to solve this really big issue. And just going through the entire lore of this story is amazing. And to find out that later on after, I watched the movie and everything, is that there was an edit of this film that was supposed to be over an hour longer than it already is in the movie. Like, the movie was going to be an hour longer than this. Now, do I wish to see that hour-longer edit? Yes, I do. I'm not going to lie. This movie, after it's done, you're like, I just want more. I want to see Grace and Rocky interacting with each other and just really getting into it. That is what I really want to see. Just the two of them interacting. Because both of them are in a sort of, game over phase of their mission. So now it just really doesn't matter. So they're interacting with one another. They're figuring out what they want to do. They're just hanging out to sort of figure this problem out. So just having more of that would have been amazing. But I feel like at the 2 hour and 45 minute mark, I think it did really well, and it landed on the mark that it needed to land on. So props for that. And now it is said that there is a possibility of a sequel to this film, meaning we might get a Project Hail Mary 2, which would be very cool. Just the idea of being able to see this as a sequel, probably Grace returning to Earth. Obviously, he's going to show up to Earth and Ava is not going to be there. Obviously, because technically speaking, I think it's like over 50 years for him to get back to Earth based on his calculation. So I expect there to be a journey home, sort of like a Project Hail Mary 2 where he's returning home and now he has to help scientists on Earth, and Rocky is going to go along with him, which is going to be very interesting. So the interaction and the story and the score and the cinematography, all of these incredible things surmount to an incredible film that needs to be seen in theaters. And talking about seeing it in theaters, I got to see this film with my parents. Now, obviously, when it comes to certain films that we watch together, my dad, obviously, he brought up something that was kind of an issue to him that may be an issue to other people, but I feel like it's important to bring up, and that is this film tends to lean more comedic. And based on his assessment, he said, listen, I love everything about this movie except the part where they lean more comedic than, more into the science and focusing more on, a more in-depth story that leads into the science. So he was like, listen, if it were more in line with, say, Interstellar, where Interstellar is more serious, more focused, there isn't really any comedy there. He said that he would have given this movie a high score for himself, but he ultimately said, like, you know, if I were to give it a 0 out of 10, I would give it like a 7, maybe a 7.5. If it weren't for, you know, if it weren't for the comedy, I might have liked it more. But that is an issue that maybe some people might have, and maybe you're watching and you have that issue as well with certain films, but just wanted to let you know that it does lean more comedic than anything else. And like I say in every single one of my videos, these are just my opinions, my thoughts, just random thoughts that come out of my head after watching films or TV shows or playing games that I just throw onto here. And because of that, I want to hear your thoughts. Have you seen Project Hail Mary? Do you like the idea of Project Hail Mary being a sequel? Are you going to wait till it comes out on digital? Is Project Hail Mary the type of movie you would normally go see in theaters? If not, then what kind of film would you rather see in theaters other than Project Hail Mary? Do you happen to see this becoming a $1 billion film in the future? Who knows? I want to hear from you and your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos go live on this channel. And thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.
Scrolling through YouTube, same old routine, then bam, movie savant, what a scene. Trivia bombshells dropping knowledge like rain. Forget the dishes, gotta watch it again. Movie buffs unite, savants to place. Subscribe and hit the bell, don't leave a trace. Next level knowledge keeps you in the loop. Savants got the scoop, ain't nothing to recoup.